Good. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It is 12:32, and I'm going to call the Monday, June 24th, 2024 meeting of the Westborough Public Library Board of Trustees to order. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed, and we'd like to thank Westborough TV for their participation in that. We are here today to interview two finalists for the position of library director. I would like to take a minute to thank the individuals that served on the 9-member search committee that helped us to get to this point. Joanne Chandler, Wendy Comey, Deb Cushman, Kate Daly, myself, Jen Kirkland, Shelby Marshall, Carolyn Spring, and Christy Williams. I would also like to take a minute to thank Assistant Town Manager Kim Foster for helping us through this process. The search committee held a total of 4 meetings during which it completed a preliminary review of applicants, received and conducted screening interviews with 5 candidates. That brings us to today, in which the search committee is recommending 2 finalists to be interviewed. So we are going to start with Mr. Kevin Sheehan. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have you come sit up here in that chair. Yeah. I left a copy of the questions that we'll be reading for you, and there's some water if you'd like some.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We'll take a minute and go around.
Can you hear me?
We can. Thank
So
you.
I need to lean.
Yeah, the recommendation is to lean a little forward, or bring it. You can bring it closer too. We'll take a minute to go around and introduce ourselves. We are a 9-member board, and we have 8 of us here today. Our 9th member is watching on Westborough TV. So we'll start down here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Janine Mindrum.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Mike Karp.
Nice to meet you.
Kate Daly.
Nice to meet you.
Ed Baldwin. I'm also the chair of the Library Building Committee.
Oh, great.
Deb Cushman, nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Mary Johnston, as the chair of the trustees, as well as also on the Library Building Committee.
Great.
Dr. Mary Christensen.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Dottie Mello.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so we have 6 questions for you today, and we're just going to take turns going around and asking them, and there's a copy for your reference as well. So we'll begin here with Mary.
Thank you. And thank you for being here. Could you please tell us why the position of director of the Westborough Public Library is a good match for you? And then what experiences do you have that will lead you to be a success in this new endeavor?
I think the position's a good match for me, or I'm a good match for the position because I have a lot of background as an educator. I taught English in Japan and in the United States. I've had a background in customer service and training, and I've been in libraries for about 20 years. I like the town of Westborough. It's a beautiful downtown, vibrant downtown. I've had some familiarity with Westborough, having gone to college at Assumption College at the time. And I think all my experience, my life experience has really prepared me. Nothing really phases me. I've had a tornado hit my library. I've had a police car chase with guns drawn behind the library where I worked. I think truly I just really believe in the mission of the library to promote lifelong learning, professional enrichment, and satisfying curiosity and creativity. And I think a lot of librarians nowadays, they just try to get people in the door and try to be relevant, but I really believe that reading and communication and language and serving people as humans is an important part of library service.
Thank you.
Anyone else ask? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Deb?
Yes. What steps would you take to enhance collaboration and create more meaningful partnerships between the library and other town departments, local schools, businesses, and community organizations? And then what are some fun or innovative outreach ideas you might have that could effectively educate people of all ages on what the library has to offer?
Well, I think the important question is how can we help you? for example, in the COVID-19 lockdowns, a lot of local restaurants were hurting, local businesses were hurting. It would be great if the library could have a scavenger hunt around the town. I believe the library is already doing that with the teens right now, but it's a way to get people to patronize the businesses that pay the taxes and fund the library, and just fosters an overall sense of community. That would be a fun thing. One of the things I'm trying to do in my current position is buy art for the library, because it can promote reading just by sitting there and hanging there, and will do so long after I'm gone. So in the library I work now, there's a frieze of authors written in gold: Milton, Shakespeare, Homer, Dante. And I've actually pulled some of the young people who worked in the libraries, and a lot of them had never had to read any of that. So what I'm going to be doing is purchasing art reflecting those stories and those themes to actually get people curious. And then I'm going to create a scavenger hunt. I would create a scavenger hunt. Hopefully I don't get the chance to do that. So that people can see different collections. So for example, the first line of Homer's Odyssey is "Sing, O Muse." Well, that's a clue. Go to find a compact disc by the band Muse, and then they go find that, and then there's a clue that will lead them to a DVD of a movie, or that kind of thing.
As a follow-up question to that, how do you see the library director partnering with the town?
There's an article from City Journal, I think it was 2018. It was called "A Republic in the Atlantic," and it's about a college prep program in the Azores, and they got these kids to read Greek literature, and not in Greek, but the things like the plays, the Greek tragedies. But there's a physical component to it as well. So they were reading, they were learning how to discuss and disagree, but they're also cooperating in challenges, climbing mountains and things of that nature. So that would be a great opportunity to partner with maybe the rec department or the schools, if there are teachers willing to facilitate that kind of program. I know some libraries have had Hunger Games obstacle courses, so that'd be, again, with the rec department, that would be a great idea. So, something tied into literature or reading or current movies or storytelling media.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Ed?
Okay, so this is question 3. How do you prioritize professional development and foster a positive and motivated work environment for library staff? And the sub-questions: how do you promote and maintain a healthy working relationship amongst staff? What do you think are the best strategies for dealing with conflicts involving staff and the public? And finally, how do you monitor staff morale, and how have you or might you respond if you identify the morale is low?
Well, I think all these questions are intertwined. I think it's important for staff to feel appreciated and that their work is valuable. A good example of this, when I was teaching English in Japan, there was a teacher who seemed to have a bad attitude, and some of the people complained he was wearing clothes that were not really up to professional standards and things of that nature. And I looked around, and the local school was top heavy. There was a trainer and 5 assistant trainers, and probably half the staff were in sort of management positions. And we were doing things like monitoring other teachers or going to training programs, and meanwhile the others were just at the grind. So I just talked to him and approached him about the clothing issue. He said he's gaining weight, and in Japan there weren't a lot of clothes available to him, and he was going to be going home for a visit, and he was going to be purchasing more clothes. Great, that problem is solved. But the other thing I started to do was assign him more responsibility, so that he doesn't feel like he's just grinding away and not having any development or agency, I guess is the word I'm looking for, in his work. Healthy working relationships, a lot of that is interpersonal, and I just have to accept the fact that you can't change people, but you can work with them, and you can get them to work with each other. And training, I think, is what I'm trying to do is to have training partners, because it builds in a level of accountability. So if I assign 2 people to learn Excel so that we can improve our bookkeeping to spend on the budget, well, then they can hold each other accountable and not feel, and also bounce ideas off of each other, saying like, I don't get this, can you explain this to me, or that kind of thing. And I think conflicts among staff and the public, I think the most important thing is that they feel heard, that they feel like they're taken seriously, and that's actually by listening to them and taking their concerns seriously. And one of the things I try to do is not to jump to conclusions, and I try to, think, is this word correct? So, for example, right now, book bans and censorship are words that are thrown around, and I don't know if they're exactly the correct words. You can't be arrested for owning this book. Just because the library doesn't collect it or put it in a certain location, it doesn't mean it's being banned. Back when there's a problem with Dr. Seuss, people were saying, they're canceling Dr. Seuss. Well, who's they? Well, it turns out that the publisher who owns the copyright is choosing not to publish it. So who is banning Dr. Seuss in that case? And if you took it out of the collection, would that be banning it or would it be preserving it? So, for example, at MIT, there was a limited access collection. We had some photography books in there, and a patron said, is it in there because of its explicit content? And my colleague really put it very succinctly, and she said, they're in there to protect them, not to censor them, because people had been taking razor blades and cutting out pages, so yes, it is restricting access, but it's also preserving. So I just think discussion and analysis and just making people think and listen to their ideas is critical, whether they're staff or the general public.
I have a follow-up question on that. Given the library's in a unique situation where we have staff across many different shifts across the entire week, what strategies do you use to best communicate with staff that are working different schedules that never overlap so that everyone gets the same message?
Well, it has to be email, because that's sort of a permanent record. You can tell that it was sent and that there's proof that I actually communicated the message. But what I'd like to do is actually shift up my training and actually get to work with people. Right now I work an evening a week until 9 o'clock. Just adjusting my schedule to make sure that I can meet the various staff and actually not only communicate, but actually develop a working rapport. And then there could be handwritten notes, because it's an element of surprise.
I think I have another, anyone else I have another one if anyone. Sorry, got lots of questions.
Has one as well.
Oh, go ahead, Doc, go right ahead.
That's all right,
No.
I'm looking further at the next question.
Okay. My other follow-up question to this is in relation to conflicts between staff and the public. What is your approach to supporting staff that are public-facing employees to prepare for serving all dynamics of our public?
Yeah, I've served in public-facing roles, and my number one rule is not to throw them under the bus, to explain to people that they're doing their job, they're just trying to help, and if the public's not satisfied with that, then just ask for some grace and consider that the person's trying to do their job, and ask the public how could it be better? Was it the tone? Was it the message? What is it that upsets you the most?
Yep, go right ahead.
Thank you. In working with staff, what model are you using in terms of your process? Are you using, for example, hierarchy, or are you using bottom-up, a circular, open door? What's the methodology for your working with staff?
Well, I like FaceTime and meeting one-on-one, or at least making sure I talk to them casually, and pretty much open door unless I'm in a meeting or something of that nature. Well, right now, actually, I have the door closed a lot because, the library is right there. There's no sort of buffer zone, and when I have to take a call, I close the door, and sometimes I forget to reopen it or or whatever, but I do make sure that staff feel that they can knock or call me if the phone's working. And that's a problem right now. But in terms of reporting structures, right now where I work and in my previous public library work, the structure's been pretty flat. It's been the director and then everybody else, but people have different domains. So if there's a circulation problem, there's the head of circulation. If there's a cataloging problem, there's the head of technical services. So before getting to me, depending on what the problem or issue might be, there is a channel so that I'm not trying to handle everything.
Mhm. Thank you.
Go ahead. What, do you have a question? I have one more, sorry.
Go ahead.
My last follow-up question is on professional development. What do you see the director's role is in staff professional development, and how would you support that?
Well, first of all, I would encourage it. Point out whether it be like a CWMRS training or a Mass Library System or New England Library Association, just to keep an eye out for what's available. And also, if there's a particular topic, then I would take a poll and try to appeal to staff interests. And not only just to say, hey, you might enjoy this, but we need you. Can you hear me?
Hold on. I think we just lost that.
Lost the microphone. Huh. Can you?
Nope.
So this one.
That works.
We need you to go and learn this and report back to us and let us know what's going on with this. You know, so it's adding a level of responsibility, and like we're counting on you. And I fully support staff who want to professionally develop, because I can't do it all on my own, and everybody benefits. Everybody in the organization benefits when staff learn and share what they've learned.
Great, thank you.
Okay, question 4, also multi-part. How would you address challenges related to limited resources such as staffing, space constraints, or budgetary constraints while maintaining high-quality library services? And A, please describe your approach to advocating for the library. B, beyond social media, please describe other avenues used to promote and market the library.
Well, one of the things I believe in is just adhering to the mission of the libraries. And so if things need to be cut, let's trim what doesn't fit. So some libraries I think have had Zumba, but does that promote personal enrichment? In a sense, health, yes, but then the town also has a recreation department that's perfectly capable of doing that work. You know, the Library of Things, does the power washer advance professional and personal enrichment or a love of reading or lifelong learning? No, well, maybe we need to cut that. You know, that applies to services as well as just, you know, things in the collection. Staffing constraints, you know, if hours need to be reduced, you know, that's a temporary stopgap, or if a temp agency is able to be hired, if it's just vacancies and not budget. And there's a lot in there that varies depending on the condition and the circumstances. But I think it's just really important while facing challenges to explain to the patrons and the residents that we're doing the best we can. And, you know, inspire some support that way. And if, you know, there's budget, if the problem is money, then perhaps a local business would be willing to donate some resources or supplies, something of that nature. But this goes back to just building a relationship with the local business community so that they would be, you know, eager to support the library. And it's also important to thank the people who do support the library. So, for example, paint night. The canvases are supplied by the Friends of the Public Library, so we always say thank you. In the calendar listing, we say thank you to the Friends of the Public Library for donating the art supplies. Or it could be thank you to, you know, South Street Diner or Harry's or whatever for hosting this author event.
Follow-up. Here at the Westborough Library, we have two such organizations. The first one is the Friends of, who run a monthly book sale, and the revenue goes to programming or whatever is decided between the entities. But we also have a foundation that works with the building and getting ready when we were going to be doing the more than just renovation. Have you had any experience in working, raising money in a professional atmosphere, like with a foundation, like with the nonprofit, a 501c3, in your current position or in any of the ones you've had prior?
Well, with the Friends, we've had a fundraiser, a jewelry exchange. It wasn't really a lot of money, but it was more of a FaceTime, get people aware of the Friends and drive the membership. But I haven't had any direct experience in my previous work as a library director in Revere or in MIT.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to follow up
Yep, go right ahead.
on this line of questioning. Nice to have you with us, Kevin.
Okay.
There are at least a few of us on this board who have a fairly substantial background in grant chasing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how we might work with you on that. And if you have any ideas, obviously we're eager to hear them. I'd also like, in connection, let's sit back. I'd also like, in connection with that, for you to talk about non-government, which is to say, in this case, private sources of income, and how we can put the arm on them for either special projects or perhaps grants that have some enduring value over the course of several years.
Okay. Let me rewind a bit. How I would ask for help. Grant chasing is wonderful. I'm glad to have help with it. I find that some of the grants that are available require so much extra paperwork and so much to maintain. And given the, depending on the level of staffing or the general bandwidth of library staff to document those things, sometimes it's how much money are we talking about versus the payoff. So yeah, I would welcome the help of the grant chasers. I think some of the private local history ones are often ones that come up. For example, in Revere, the Historical Society received a grant from the legacy of a wealthy donor, and they were looking for community members to apply, and I was going to apply for digitization of the microfilm, the newspaper microfilm for that. In Burlington, the director applied for a local industry. A real estate, okay, thank you. A real estate or property management company, and for some reason they just didn't get one of the grants. So I would like to know I would like some help in learning how to actually get awarded a grant that is worthwhile. I'm sorry, there was a lot in the question, so could you repeat?
No,
the
I think
second part?
actually I'm getting a sense of how you would work with us, and I think you would find us to be very supportive of your efforts
great,
on this.
yes.
Yeah. I'd also like to understand, though, your view vis-a-vis working with local businesses. We have some large businesses, Amazon-sized because it's Amazon, but also other larger businesses in town. And a number of smaller businesses, some of which have been in, at least one of which has been in the same family for I don't know how many generations, but for over 300 years. So, yeah, that's right. So, have you been involved in any programs with local folks, perhaps whose contributions might be smaller than the others, but who nonetheless would have perhaps an opportunity of leveraging their existing environment or their existing contacts to get more money from the folks that they know. Money
Okay.
or other support, sorry.
Well, this isn't a commercial organization, but the Knights of Pythias often fund summer reading programs for libraries. So they're fraternal organizations or charity organizations too, and I've worked with some of those to solicit donations. In my previous interview, I talked about a sort of a dream of mine to have I don't know if I'd call it a contest or an initiative, to get the whole town to memorize all 140 lines or whatever of Longfellow's Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Yes. So why? Well, because you can measure that whether people actually did it or not. A lot of libraries get involved in poetry, but if you actually memorize 140 lines, you've actually accomplished something. You can be proud of it, and it's difficult. But in the poem itself, he rode across the river. He rode a horse. There is a cemetery, there's a church, a wooden ladder. So what I want to do is to have local businesses, for example, a hardware store, donate a ladder or the cash equivalent, or a cemetery to donate a plot or a cash equivalent, or a group of funeral homes. Yes, who hits up funeral homes for their Little League? But it's a way to get their name out there. But it's also just it's the grand project that everyone can get involved in. I think that would be really important.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready to move on to the next one.
Yep.
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a follow-up. One of the problems with limited resources is you have challenging priorities. In other words, you have this amount of money, but you need a certain percentage to be for books to maintain our certification. But we have a problem with our HVAC, or we have a problem, we need computer. How do you determine, in terms of space, in terms of staffing, competing priorities? How do you work to determine which priority gets preference?
Well, the number one priority is certification, because without certification, we lose state aid, we lose membership in CWMRs. I believe we would be a silo. We'd be disconnected. So that's the priority. That means hours, and that means hours open, and the materials expenditure. So those two things take top priority. And I'm sorry, can you repeat the rest?
Beyond what's required to maintain our certification, you have competing priorities. Maybe the children's department needs a new computer, or the elevator needs X amount of dollars for repair. Or the teens need more space, or somebody else needs more. How do you determine which competing priority to meet?
Well, I guess that depends on the timing, and if there's only X amount left in this year's fiscal budget, then that can maybe wait another few months. If it involves access or safety, that will take a priority. Equipment, it might be hard not to have a computer in the children's, but is it the end of the world to go up to the adult? It's inconvenient, sure, but we just all have to live within our constraints.
Okay. And one of the things we mentioned was beyond social media, other avenues to promote and market the library.
When I was in Revere, we printed off pens, the public library and the website, and the pens go everywhere. When people are at the bank, when they're signing a check to a school or something, or they're signing a restaurant bill, there's the library right there. I find social media is overrated. I think the physical is a good reminder. I know that from being a parent, and things go home in the folder. There's something I don't want to throw away because I know it's coming up, and because I don't throw it away, I see it 4 or 5 times every time I shuffle the papers on the kitchen counter. You know what I mean? And then there are all kinds of creative ways. I know that some libraries have taken out billboards. TV commercials on local TV. one of the things I would like to do is to get, I don't know if the high school has like an AV club, but to get them to film commercials for the library and have them air on Westborough TV. And then we can post the videos on social media too. But it's, I find that word of mouth is really, especially among younger people, is probably the best way to get people actually to use the library. I found this at MIT. One of the student workers requested a book from another library in the Boston Library Consortium. And I said to her, you know, if you weren't working here, would you have thought to do that? She said, no, not at all. And I've seen graduate students approach the desk, and they discovered that the only format available for their research, for the information, was microform. And they just went away dejected. And I think they chose a different topic because they didn't want to have to deal with microform. So I think peer-to-peer word of mouth is actually the best way to get people to actually use the library.
Thank you. Go on to the next question.
Next one? Yes, okay. This is the sixth question. Firstly, what is your philosophy regarding the role of programming in the library? And there are two members of subset here. In a smaller space library such as ours, how do you balance the use of space amongst all categories of patrons while maintaining a high level of services for all? And second part is, what role do you see the teens in our community having in relationship to our library?
I think programming is critical. I think it's what gets people involved to meet each other. It just fosters the community. I think that it also, you know, engages people with whatever they might read or consume. It's one thing to just go to the library and rent a DVD and watch it, but it's great if you can have a group of people to say, you know, the book was better, or why did they cut that part, or I don't think this casting for this role was great. That's what really people want. They want community. They want to be able to bounce ideas off of each other, whether they know it or not, because we are social creatures. I think it would be good to do programming off-site, especially in the summertime, at parks, maybe even at night, like stories around a campfire. You know, I think it would be good to try to. One of the tragedies I think of modern culture is the compartmentalization of generations. I don't know if I said that very well, but you know, teens don't know how to talk to each other now because of the phones, but they also don't know how to talk to adults. They don't, and that, of course, that's generalization. I don't mean to insult any teenagers, but I see it. Even some of the employees that work in some public libraries, they treat adults without any sort of deference. Adults that they report to, you know, they get a little sassy or you know, joke around. But yeah, I think it would be great if teens could work with local businesses, and local businesses can work with teens. They can recruit fresh talent. They can actually identify some people who have some skills to offer. I think it would be great for young people to actually talk to older people, and it would be great for some older people, especially if they're homebound or you know, they do nothing but watch TV all day, to actually meet and talk with young people. One of the best things that I ever heard was my son's friend was in Girl Scouts, and they did a reverse trick-or-treat at a nursing home. So they got dressed up in their costumes, and they passed out candy to the residents. And I'm sure it made the day of some of those residents. So I really think people need to stop catering to certain groups, because what you're doing is building tribes or silos. I think it's a better approach to try to incorporate, try to address a larger population. You know, for example, an ice cream social. Who doesn't like ice cream? Everybody likes ice cream. So I guess that's my overall approach. Try to bring people together. Try to bridge generational divides, and try to support the community, the business community, the residents, and get people talking to each other. Yeah, and the teens, I think they're probably the best advocates. You know, they might have siblings. They can, you know, they have schoolwork. They have to do homework. They can tell their little brother to come in or little sister to come in and do, you know, the group story time, or whatever it might be. And I know that some libraries have a teen advisory group. I'm not sure if Westborough does, but that might be worth exploring too, to see how. That's one of the things I do with the library workers. I say, you know, do your friends use the library? No? Why not? What would get them to use the library? Do they know about the museum passes? Do they know about the DVDs? And very often the answer is no. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
I have a follow-up. Just so you know, the microphone's not working is part of the test. So relax. This question also dealt with your leadership style, which was something that I had alluded to earlier. When you speak about an open door philosophy of leadership, that means, for example, if the custodian of the building comes to you and says, I think there's a problem, the person in charge can either say, you keep to your job and I'll keep to mine, or, okay, let's talk about that. Staffing, development, if you have a circle, is that you bring everyone together to brainstorm and get the best ideas. And then the hierarchy is that it starts at the top and it's filtered down to the bottom. The other part of the question is, if you're going to advocate for the library and finding different ways, and you're currently at which library now? I forgot.
Everett.
Okay. Can you give me the elevator version of your mission statement? Because that is the strongest advocacy that anyone in a position of authority of an organization can do. Do you have that at the tip of your tongue that you could just share with us? What is the mission statement of your library?
It's funny that you say that because I did memorize it verbatim, but I've been trying to memorize Westborough's and I'm confusing it, and now I'm
Okay.
on the hot seat, but
So-
let me just give it a whirl. The mission of the public libraries is to promote a love of reading and lifelong learning in children and adults by providing access to the world of information and ideas. Open to all the Everett Public Libraries, protect intellectual freedom. Oh, no, I'm messing it up.
Okay.
But that's pretty close.
Yeah. So the elevator version is really important, is because when you're in a conversation with someone about what you do, you want to be able to have that at the tip of your tongue.
Yeah.
So it's really important.
Well, my personal one, which I think applies if we read different mission statements, it's fostering literacy, lifelong learning, and community. Just those 4 words, if you count lifelong learning.
Mhm.
Those 2.
Okay. And the last thing is about your advocacy in terms of, right now you're also a Board of Trustee member in your town, correct?
Yes,
And you are also a director of a library.
yes.
How do you see, in your hierarchy thinking, you will be coming to a town with a Board of Trustees and a new director? Again, in your management style, who has the leverage? Who has, for example, when you're on the Board of Trustees, how do you deal with your superintendent, your director of the library?
Well, I see him, he does report to me with the budget, and as a trustee, I have oversight and responsibility for the policies, but I tend to stay in my lane and let him do his job, because every once in a while he might bring up an idea or something that he wants funding for, because as it is now, according to the rules, if he wants to spend state aid money, he needs trustees' approval. So I try to make sure that it's clear to the rest of the trustees that he's not asking us for permission to do it, that that's within his wheelhouse to do. What he's asking us is for the permission to use the money or the donations, as opposed to whether he does the program or not. But I do also, as a member of the community, share with him my concerns if there's something that's problematic, or offer him my ideas on how library services might be improved. Yeah, so I guess as a trustee, working with the director, I try to support him in his role as opposed to more of a manager-direct report relationship.
Okay, thank you.
May I ask one
Karina?
more?
Sure.
Getting back to programming, when I think about populations served by public libraries in general or Westborough specifically, and we have a wide range of residents, diverse residents, from the very young to our most senior residents, coming from a wide range of backgrounds. Is there a specific population that you see most, at risk of losing out? I don't know if that's quite the right word. Losing out of the library services and needing, and how do you target that population with programming? How do you make sure that you reach out to that population? It might be more than one population, but who might be overlooked?
I think given the rapid change in technology, I think the elderly are overlooked because when they want to do something, they're pointed to a website and they don't want to.
Testing.
Sorry about that.
I think I meant that you went.
Just in the room where it's cutting out.
Okay.
We're working for broadcast.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
I was on vacation at Disney World, and there's a man who brought his elderly mother, probably on the last trip there, and he wanted to take a picture in front of the train station. And the PhotoPass guy was saying, "Oh, just." He's explaining how to do it, but clearly the guy didn't have the wherewithal. He didn't have a smartphone to download the app to get his picture. So it was just heartbreaking to see. Especially at a place like that. I mean, I'm sure they would have served, they went on to serve him, but all the extra hoops that he had to go through probably made the whole experience unpleasant. So I think the elderly, one of the things that we're exploring in Everett is to have a bookmobile, a book drop, or partner with Council on Aging to get that going. I know some communities have the Friends volunteers do that. Other communities might be language minorities, people who don't speak English much. Again, getting the community together would be great because I know that you have conversation circles for Spanish learners. A language exchange would be great to get people to do a craft and then together, and they don't speak the same language. They learn the word for scissors or glue or whatever it might be. But the fact that there's a task involved actually makes them have a need to communicate, and actually I think would develop their language better. That's just my ESL background. So yeah, I guess language communities, elders. I don't know, I guess some of the question revolves around the meaning of left behind, because probably some affluent kids have a million devices in front of them, but the less well-to-do kids have nothing else to do but go into the library. So in one sense, I think the affluent kids are missing out as those affluent kids because they don't use the library, and they don't, their nanny or whoever might not take them to the library. So I guess my background in sales is it's all about features and benefits. When you're trying to sell somebody something, you enumerate the feature, but also explain the benefit. So for example, this car has Sirius XM. That's the feature. But the benefit is, so when you're on that long commute and you're stuck in traffic, you have 100 channels to choose from instead of the 10 or 12, 4 of which might be staticky. That's features and benefits. I think that's an approach that everybody should apply.
Thank you. And then we'll move on to our last question.
So we skipped over number 3, so I'm going to do that.
Nope, we didn't skip over 3.
Oh, you know what? I may have a different page from you. Let me see.
Oh.
Very last question.
Didn't we just do
Did
this?
we just,
We did it. Number 3 is the, all right, let me see. No, we just did
Which
this.
is-
That's this one. We just did this one.
So we have a different page from us. Okay, sorry. That was put at the bottom. I get it. I'm sorry. Excuse me. How do you handle the challenges related to censorship or controversial materials, balancing intellectual freedom with community values?
Well, I had a challenge to an item in my collection. There was somebody who was emailing libraries. So I take first into account is, are they a resident or not? Have they been blanket emailing other libraries? Okay. And my default position is not to remove it unless they can show a good reason. Unless they can demonstrate a good reason. The particular book in mind, they were objected to a map that didn't include a modern-day country. But it wasn't a geographic map. You wouldn't confuse it with anything that delineated boundaries. It's more of a cartoonish map. And the person reached out to the children's librarian. Okay. Yeah, the person reached out to the children's librarian, so I had the children's librarian respond, but I guided the children's librarian in the response. And a lot of other libraries appealed to things like the ALA, and I said, no, this is our decision. And then if she didn't like it, then she could appeal again. But I didn't see any need to apply to any other body. I mean, it's our library, it's our collection, it's our decision. And then if they persisted, I would then invoke the ALA, the common standard practices. But I would also consider whether the work would do any harm. Could somebody be harmed by this? And also preserve the integrity of the work. Libraries do not collect expurgated items. I learned this at MIT, actually. There's a run of chemistry books, and there's an error in one of them. And I said to the director, can't we just rip off the page with the error? And she said, no, we have to get the newest one because we do not collect expurgated items. It's against the library values. So that's, and as I alluded to again, I want to make sure that people are heard, and I would want to offer them a good explanation for why we didn't think something met the level where it needed to be removed. Now, something, just because it isn't removed doesn't mean it can't be moved. Sometimes the objection is to whether something is in the children's section or the young adult section, or whether it's in, if it's related to health, or whether it's related to, current events, that kind of thing. So I've actually challenged a book once in Burlington. It was a book about Paul Revere, and it was factually inaccurate. It was a little board book. And they said that he wrote on, I think, April 4th, but according to the poem, it's 18th of April. I tend to preserve the collection as it is, but if someone can demonstrate harm, if somebody can get hurt, especially books about health, or if it includes, bomb-making instructions, something of that nature, then I think removing it from the collection, again, would not be censorship. It would just be the Westborough Public Library's decision not to include it in our collection. But that doesn't mean that residents can't get it from another library through interlibrary loan, or go to another library to get it themselves.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to take a minute to thank you for your written exercise. We appreciate the time you took into that and its depth of it. It's nice to hear your layout for a 90-day transition plan, should that come to fruition. I just wanted to end by asking you, did you have any questions that you had for us?
Was there anything that Maureen was going to get off the ground, or tried to get off the ground, but didn't? Are there any initiatives or projects that you would like to see the new director start off with? Aside from, I know the repair is the big project, but other than that, if the building were completely structurally sound, were there any other initiatives?
Yeah, so Maureen has worked really hard over the last 14 years and has done a lot of great things, and has worked hard over the past couple months to complete a lot of her projects. So it's a great time for the library because whoever's stepping in is not tying up loose ends, but starting fresh. One of the things that we as a board and with Maureen have been trying over the past several years has been a bookmobile. And that hasn't come to fruition yet, and that's something that we as a board, I think, have been tried for a while. We do a lot of community outreach, and our staff currently use their own transportation to bring books and do mobile checkouts at different communities in town. So we already have that system in place. But a big dream of ours is to get a bookmobile. So I would say that's one of ours.
Thank you. I think also the 5-year plan
Mm-hmm.
for what the vision is for and how fast the world changes. So it's really a 2 or 3 year plan,
Mm-hmm.
because by the time you get to year 5, everything's obsolete anyway. So that's something that's really important, and it seems to be converging with 3 other, the building, integrating new people into the organization, and doing a strategic plan. So there's a lot on the plate, but they're all in separate little, parts of the plate. So you can take a little taste of each thing, and hopefully the savory piece will come out on top. My husband's a chef, so we talk food all the time.
So Maureen was in the job for 13 years. I think whoever gets the job, their name might be not Maureen for a considerable amount of time. I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but what made her successful, or what do you think you would miss the most, or what do you think you would hope would be continued with the new director?
So personally, I think one of the things that made Maureen a success was her unending support of our staff, her commitment to the community, and her involvement in the greater Westborough community and advocating for the library and keeping us forward, and her connections to other town departments. Like in our structure, libraries tend to be a little island, but we're not. We're just connected to the town in a different way. And keeping those connections, I think, are some of the keys to Maureen's success that I think would help carry anyone forward. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
Well, I think in addition to her support for the staff, she built a great staff of professionals who are committed and excited about what they do. And so I guess my feeling is they need continued support, nurturing, enrichment, and to keep that path going.
I would just say the word passion.
Yeah.
She helped build a library that's an exciting place to be.
How did the libraries emerge out of COVID? Did things go back to normal fairly quickly, or was it sort of, for example, I don't know any library that has continued curbside pickup, but and probably a lot of people miss that, but it is a staff burden that takes them away from doing other things. But overall, in terms of occupancy limits or masks or things like curbside pickup, how did the library transition back to normal? And are there vestiges of things that were eliminated pre-COVID that people want to see back?
That's a great question. I'm super proud of the work that our staff did during COVID. We were one of the first libraries in the area to open and continue our services and set up curbside pretty quickly and then open our doors after. We have not continued curbside, but we do have mobile delivery. We had that before COVID, so we do home delivery of books if people want to use that avenue as well. So extending curbside would be an interesting thought. I don't know.
Well, one of the things about the present director is that coming back after COVID was not to resume being normal. It was to be innovative. What did we learn while we were shut down? How did we work as a staff as being shut down? And I was there the first day, because I love the library, the first day that it opened, and the faces of the staff who were there had such enormous smiles on their faces because they were home. And that's one of the powers that Maureen had, is to create an atmosphere where everyone felt at home, but it was run like a business. You know, you have to do both at the same time. And that was, for me, her most endearing quality, that she has the warmest of smiles, but she knows how to get work done and how to use her staff to get the work done. So I don't think we ever came back to normal, which is good, because we had to learn a lot.
That's great to hear.
It's the new normal. Our, much like a lot of libraries, our ebook collection has increased in finding that balance between the price of ebooks and the collection, and making sure that the resources that we have available continue to grow in the method that the community wants them most. So keeping an eye on that.
Great.
Anything else?
I don't think I have any other questions. I think I've asked them all, but I appreciate your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to interview for the position. And I wish the libraries, the library trustees and the Westborough Public Library well, whether that be with me or another person, another director.
Thank you, and
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for your time.
Sure. Go out. Good. It's okay. Yes, I just printed out the one we did last night and changed the order.
Oh, I did change that.
Yeah, well, and I didn't get one today. It's okay, I didn't get one today, so that's why.
That's all right.
It's okay, I'm good. I don't know why I didn't get one today. They never got to this end. You didn't get one today either, the new ones. I don't know. You're okay. Yeah, I have to choose.
I've got my notes, I have everything. Basically, I just want a good top of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just like in the Olympics with the gymnasts. Who is that that just stood out there? I can't think. Right in the sort of beige jacket.
That's Joanne. She's the one who did the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
That's Joanne, but we all are. And she was on the search committee. She was on the search committee. So I'm glad that you knew that you want a first interview. I think that's what I'm calling it.
You glad?
When I did give her homework for the first interview. I think that's better. Well, I know it's allowed, but I was like thinking, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's, well, there's nothing you can do about it. So it's
No. What? Oh, I'm freezing.
And I forgot my sweater in the car. Would you like to cool down?
Feels nice.
I'm the air conditioning. No,
Are you often cold?
always, and I always have a sweater, and I left it on the couch when I was going back to get the water, so there's something wrong with them.
There's water. Is there water?
Yes, I brought 2 for each of the, if no one took the first one, you want it? Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I'm guessing. Yeah, I wondered about that. What that would be like.
So if somebody else wants it, there's also I brought cups. Of course, I thought somebody would get thirsty while speaking. Okay, it's gonna start now. You have 2 seconds, like 8.
Testing.
It's gonna come on and off.
Is that good, Maureen? Oh, okay. Sure. Okay. Project, yeah. Oh, I can project, don't worry. You got it. No one gets it right, it's fine.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to welcome Kate Coraccio to join us for our second interview here. We're going to take a minute. You've met some of us during round 1, but we'll take a minute to go through introductions. We are a 9-member board of trustees. We have 8 of us here today, and our 9th trustee, Julia Rissmiller, is watching on Westborough TV. So we'll start over with Janine.
Hi, I'm Janine Mindrum.
I'm not,
You sure?
more or less. I'm Mike Karp, and I'm a first-year member of the board, so everything's a little new to me, but we'll see where this goes.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kate Daly. It's nice to see you again.
Ed Baldwin, I'm also the chair of the Library Building Committee.
I'm Deb Cushman. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Mary Johnson, the chair of the trustees, and I'm also a member of the building committee.
Great.
Dr. Mary Christensen.
Dottie Mello.
So, welcome. So we're going to take a similar format to screening interviews where we have a list of 6 questions, and we have a copy there for you, I think, on the table. No? Never mind. I've lost my copy as well. Yeah. Thanks.
You sure you have it?
Just a reference.
Thank you.
So we'll just take our turns going around and circle back. So we'll start with Jean. No, we're going to start with Mary.
Okay, hello.
Hi.
Can you please tell us why this position as director of the Westborough Public Library is a good match for you? And follow-up is, what experience do you have that would lead you to your success as the new director?
That's a great question. So I think that part of why this job appealed to me is, I spent the last few years in Worcester at the public library there, mostly in Maine, but also in charge of most of the branches. And I really loved and enjoyed the work. It was really, I knew every day that I went in that I was making a difference. And, that fills our cup. That's why we do what we do. But on the flip side, I would go days, weeks without ever talking to a patron. And that's really hard for somebody like me who has kind of, I started in CERC. My very first job, was in CERC. And I really love patron interaction. I love working directly with people. I love working directly with organizations. And I think you just lose a little bit of that in a larger organization. It's harder to do that day to day because you're so bogged down with everything else that's going on. And so I knew from there where I wanted to go was a smaller community library, a smaller town. My very first library job was in Marlborough, and it's still, to this day, my favorite job I've ever had. I'm still very close with everybody I worked with there. I don't think any of them still work in Marlborough. One does. But we've just kept that bond because in a smaller library, you have to get past any differences you have. You have to go all hands on deck to make it work every day, and you learn to work with each other. And that bond with staff is something that you also don't see in a larger institution. So I loved Marlborough. I love this area. I love the people in Worcester. And so when this job came up, I wasn't necessarily looking for somewhere to go. But it's, what they say about a gift horse, right? There was no way I was not going to apply for this. I'm very familiar with Maureen and all the work that she's done, and I think that, she's a leader in libraries, and to know that someone, whomever gets this, is going to walk in to an infrastructure she's built is something that really appealed to me. And so I think that, my why is that I'm really looking for a small community library that I can build into my own, something that I can cultivate, something that I can have that everyday patron interaction. I can work really closely with a group of staff. And I can have a community that really supports its library, and a board that supports its library, a foundation that supports its library, a group of friends. It's all the stakeholders that are around here. It's very clear based on all of these 9-person interviews I keep having that there's a lot of people truly, and there's an audience. That's wonderful to see, right? People care about the future of their library. And you don't see that in every town. You really, really don't. And so I think for me, that's my why. I think all of my experience in both larger institutions, more urban institutions, but also a lot of smaller institutions. I spent almost 5 years in Natick. That was a huge, Natick was a wonderful town to work for and work in. Another community where the town loved and cared about its library. And to be able to kind of get them through COVID was definitely. Is that
So
going out?
Yeah.
Did I answer it?
Yes.
I'll switch to this one, or maybe I won't. Oh, there we go. Okay. Hey, we'll roll with it. Librarians are very, we roll with things. We figured it out. We know to have 2 microphones, right? Anyway, I would say in terms of what I would bring to a town like Westborough, it's really that love of community and building a library beyond its 4 walls and really being a part of kind of every piece of the town, right? There's not a whole lot of institutions that really serve every single person, every age, every kind of socioeconomic level, everybody. We're there for everyone, and it's very unique. And I think a town like Westborough, there's a lot of opportunities. It's definitely more diverse, which is another thing that I really liked. To look at. I love serving people of different backgrounds and learning more about different cultures and how do we serve them, which is different for every single group. And I think Westborough is just a really great opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Can you please tell us what steps would you take to enhance collaboration and create more meaningful partnerships between the library and other town departments, local schools, businesses, and community organizations? And also, what are some fun or innovative outreach ideas you might have that could effectively educate people of all ages on what the library has to offer?
Well, that's a great question. I think, the first piece, which is starting the collaborations, that's the easy part, because most of the time it's just asking. The harder part is building them and maintaining them and making it sustainable for whatever partnership you create. And so I think that's part of your question, right? The meaningful partnership piece. You know, I just this Friday, last Friday, I guess it's a new week, hosted a Big Wheels event, which most places call Touch a Truck. Wilmington, we call it Big Wheels, with DPW, fire, and police. And they all came down and brought their trucks, and we brought, you know, we paid the ice cream man to come, so I guess that was a great part of the partnership. But any events that we can do like that, it doesn't have to be this huge, large thing, but, you know, these events where you're bringing in other departments also leads them to bring you in when it's appropriate. And I think that's good for everyone. It's also harder for other departments in terms of how do they outreach to the community than it is for us. It's so ingrained in what we do as libraries. And I think that, you know, if I'm looking at it from the perspective of Public Works, how do I do that, right? And I love that I was able to build this relationship where they wanted to work with us to figure this out, saw us as experts in this piece of building community, and worked with us for this one singular event. Now the hard part again will be, how do we make this something that's sustained? How do we think of other things we can do with DPW? How do we build this in a way that's scalable long term? So there'll be a lot of things that we're looking at for that. But town departments aside, I mean, those are super important, especially you've got the service departments that partnerships are, they make perfect sense, right? Your schools, we're always going to be going into the schools, inviting the schools out to us, working with the teachers and the librarians at the schools, figuring out what projects are going on, what events are going on that we can be at. Can we go to the career fair and try to cultivate new librarians? It's always a hard task. You know, senior center, is a very easy partnership, and it's really fun to work with the people who do programs over at the Senior Center. And in Wilmington, they actually are in the process of building a brand new senior center. There's a lot of things that are very similar, Westborough and Wilmington, but they're building a brand new senior center, and we are now, you know, I've been in a lot of meetings with Terry, who is the director over there, trying to figure out what is going to be the impact on the library having a brand new senior center with, you know, an $800,000 pickleball field, and how do we make sure that we don't lose our senior population? How do we go there and offer our services? And what piece of that can we help with, assist with, be a part of? So I think there's always opportunities to partner. Recreation is a good one. I've done a lot of work with recreation in terms of, you know, what programs they have going on. I think one of the pieces that does make it a little hard is that libraries at its core, we're offering everything free. And recreation, sometimes there's a fee, right? They're putting on a camp, there's a fee. There's, you know, you're playing soccer, there's a fee. And so figuring out a way that we can kind of partner with that to offer something that's, you know, maybe it's a mini workshop, maybe it's something where we're sponsoring a piece of it. But those partnerships are always fun. The events are always fun. So I absolutely love partnering with departments. Community organizations, again, most of the time it's just asking and then figuring out what works for them. It's really hard, especially when you have community groups that are representing different cultures. It's not for me to determine what they need or want, right? We need to work with those organizations to figure out what is it that you need, what is it that you want, how can we help you get there, and what is our role. And so I know Westborough Public Library's done a lot of work in terms of working with community organizations, so it would be a goal to continue that. And I'm reading over your question to make sure I hit it all. Town departments, local schools, businesses. So businesses is fun. I'll give you an example of my favorite thing I've ever done with a local business, because I still keep an empty package of this in my desk. One of my favorite projects and a dream of mine was to work with, and I did this in Worcester, worked with our friends group to partner with a local coffee roastery to create the Library Lovers blend of coffee. And it was so fun. The people that ran the roastery were so smart, and they were these tasting notes, and what about this, and what if we did a Charles Dickens blend, and we did this, like, so many ideas. So we had to bring that down a little bit, and started with one. You got to start small, right? Sustainable is key. So we ended up coming up with the Library Lovers blend. I was allowed to be creative and create the label, and had it released right around Thanksgiving so that it could be a gift. I'm always looking for how can we raise the money? How can we keep our program supported? And so they ended up coming up with a mug and a coffee combo, and they sold out the first week, so they had to order more. And they have still been doing it even after I left, which is wonderful to see that partnership was sustainable. And it was great for us, it was great for them. They came and did a couple of programs with us on coffee roasting, on note tasting. There's so much to it, and I'm a big coffee drinker, and even I didn't know half of what I learned. So that would be my most fun partnership I've ever done. But we've also done different things with National Library Card Sign-Up Month, which is September, partnering with 4 different businesses where each week, if you signed up for a card or had a card, you could get something for free. So it's a free cookie at the bakery, which was great. I think McDonald's, our local McDonald's, partnered with us to give a free cone if they did that. So just small little incentives, but reasons to brag about the library, and also talk about local businesses or local owned businesses. So fun or innovative outreach ideas, it's going to depend on Westborough and who's around. You guys you got a lot to choose from. There's a lot of businesses here, and a lot of community organizations. So I'm sure I can come up with a lot of fun things that we could do that also benefit the library. And in terms of outreach, so give you another example. This Wednesday, which is why I'm glad that this was not on Wednesday night, it's our Wilmington Fun on the 4th. Wilmington does 4th of July in a very huge way. And it's this huge outreach event. So we have a table. We're running, that duck game where you pick the duck and it's got the color on the bottom and you win a prize. So we bought a bunch of books, got some fun prizes. And so I'll be sweating all night doing that. But it'll be a really fun event, giving out some swag, talking to people, gathering information for a strategic plan, and just having a fun time with all the kids, reminding them that summer reading is now, and you should be signing up and winning some prizes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next question?
This is the third question. How do you prioritize professional development and foster a positive and motivated work environment for library staff? And how do you promote and maintain a healthy working relationship among staff? What do you think are the best strategies for dealing with conflicts involving staff and the public? And how do you monitor staff morale, and how have you or might you respond if you identify the morale is low?
Okay, we got a 4-parter. I'll take it one by one. Professional development is so important, I think, in every job, but I think specifically for librarians and library workers. It's a field that is always changing. It is a field where we need to always learn and grow with new technologies. It's way more complicated than just Google, right? And we need to know where to go, what to look for, what new trends are going on, what can we do differently. The problem is if you ask a normal person, just citizen A, what else would you like to see from your library? What new thing would you like to see from your library? It's really hard for them to contextualize that, right? Unless you have this broad knowledge of all of the new things that libraries are doing. And so looking at all the trends and seeing all of the things that are going on in libraries can help us have better interactions to say, hey, would you like to see this? I see you're really into A. What if we did B? Would that be something you'd be interested in? And so it is a field where you always have to learn, grow, develop, make connections. I think in terms of professional development, thinking about conferences, sometimes the best thing you leave with are the connections that you made with the other people in your state, region, nation, who are doing the same thing as you and have the same goals as you. And maybe they're in this multi-county system and the thing that they're doing is unattainable. However, you can really think about how you can scale that, right? Maybe there's pieces of that idea that you can use in your library, or pieces of it that would never work. But you've had the opportunity to kind of talk through that and figure out, okay, this piece isn't going to work, maybe I can do that. So sometimes it's hard because we have a finite budget, right? We can only do what we can do with our budget in terms of sending staff to conferences. We obviously are not going to be able to afford to send every single staff member to every single national conference that comes. And so you really have to look at your prioritization is going to depend on your goals for that year, your action plan, your strategic plan. In Wilmington right now, I'm very focused on the children's room. We just did a renovation of the first floor, and now we're looking at how do we address the second floor, which is the children's room, in the same way that we addressed the first. And so we're really looking at, I'm prioritizing the children's staff in terms of that's the place that we're going to make decisions coming up. And so that's where I really need people to be out looking at what is going on and what's new and what's happening. So there's that piece. The lucky thing, and I know we talked a little bit about this last time, and not everybody was there. The lucky thing is that our local conferences, when they have them somewhere that isn't a million miles away or on the Cape, which is usually the case. This year they had it in Framingham, which is really wonderful. So I was able to send 8 staff members, which has never happened before. I know you guys also were, which is wonderful to hear. I think the more that you can foster that in our librarians, but also in our library workers, it really makes a difference. You create more buy-in, you get people invested in the idea, the bigger why of why we do what we do. And I think it just really is super important. So it depends on the year, the answer of, how do I prioritize it? And then I also try to be involved in as many committees, groups, interest groups, any that I can fit in my schedule. Now, no library director can ever fit them all because there is a lot. And I think that's where you really pull in to all of your library staff in terms of, divide and conquer. Can we get to all of these? Can we learn what's going on? Can we be active in the field versus just, in our library? Okay, how do I promote and maintain healthy working relationships among staff? So I think that this is really important. I am a huge believer in fair and equitable across the board, right? I treat every single person with the same respect that I would expect them to treat me with. And this is kind of why I also love policy and procedure, because I feel like that assists us in that process, that you have that to fall back on. You're not treating anybody differently, because I think that's kind of the first place where a morale starts to fall apart. So making sure that if you are delivering a difficult decision, maybe a decision not everybody agrees with, I always say as a director, if everybody likes me every minute of every day, I'm probably not doing my job, because there's always going to be difficult decisions we have to make for the institution. There's always going to be things that not everybody is going to agree with, and that needs to have a difficult decision made. I think the difference is in how you communicate that, and you make sure that people understand the why behind that, and that really helps with the understanding. If people understand why, and they can say, okay, I don't like that, but I understand why we're doing it. And you are making a decision for the good of, the institution, the patron. And so I'm willing to do that for you. So I think that that's important. I think the most important thing is just being present and communicating. I think there's a lot of directors who will go in their office, shut the door, you'll never see them all day. And I think that's a really hard thing. There's no way to build any sort of relationships. Now, there are times when you do have to go in your office and shut the door and, pump out the ARIS report. But I think the more that you can be present and interested in what they're doing and what their job is, they are your experts in every piece of your library. And so you have to learn from your staff. There are going to be pieces of the library that they will always know more about than I do, because they're there and doing it every single day. And so you have to respect that expertise and cultivate it when you can. So what do I think are the best strategies in dealing with conflicts? Oh, and the public. Okay, so in terms of staff, I think the most important thing that you can do is address it. I I think a lot of the times what I've seen is leadership that is afraid to confront an issue or doesn't know how to confront an issue, and so it continues. And it's really hard for all of the staff around that problem because it does bleed in, and it's not fair, right? It's not fair to everybody else. And I'll do it again because I love gushing about Brene Brown, but so I'll do it again. Sorry if you had to hear this last time and you have to hear it again. But I fully buy into Brene Brown, Dare to Lead. I read it probably once a year. And some parts are applicable, some parts aren't. This is not a corporation, right? However, the piece that I always go back to is clear as kind. Clear as kind means everything to me. And so if that means having a really hard conversation with somebody that you don't want to have, they don't want to have, but you have to be clear in your expectation. You have to be clear in why what they're doing is either good or not good, and how they can address that. Because there are times when that person may not even know that what they're doing is having an effect, or why what they're doing is a problem. And I think if you sit down and have that conversation, you explain your why, you are clear with them about what your expectation is, I think it at least gives them the opportunity to change, or to approach it in a different way, or to be successful in their roles. And so, I think that's a piece of strategies in terms of dealing with conflict. It's more of a direct approach. And I also always have an open door policy. Anytime anybody needs to come in and talk to me about anything, I'm always happy to listen. I can't always fix it for them, right? There's some times where you have to say, I hear you. Here's the advice I would give, but this is not something that I can fix for you. But I think sometimes just having that ear and listening helps with an understanding, right? That you appreciate them as a human being and as a worker, and all feelings are valid, right? And so I think that's how it's more of a direct approach, I would say. And how do I monitor staff morale? Oh, I didn't talk about the public. Conflicts with the public are a little bit more complicated. And it depends on the degree of the conflict. If it's a patron walks in, they're unhappy with, they didn't return a book. It's on their account. We know they didn't return the book. Staff has made a decision, we're not going to waive it, whatever. I think, when you can, you want to back up your staff. Again, they're seeing it there every day. They've probably made a decision for a reason, and if you don't agree, maybe later you find out why and you have that conversation. But I think in terms of kind of customer service, you want to de-escalate. And so if there's that conflict and somebody is at a level 10 because of this book, again, usually it's not about the book. It's probably something that happened on their way here or this morning or in their life. They're coming in because you're here and they're talking to you. And this is true of retail. I spent many years in retail. It doesn't change really. People are people. I will say for the most part, people are very nice to librarians. Although in 2024, that is a little bit different. We are seeing our public servants, our library workers kind of be a conduit for kind of political nastiness, right? We'll put it that way, that they're kind of taking the brunt of it. So I think de-escalation, I've gone through a lot of de-escalation training, had to do a lot of that in Worcester, especially where we had a lot of people come in who were dealing with a lot of problems outside of the library, and sometimes brought that in. And so coming in with an understanding that this is probably not about you, don't take anything that they're saying personally. I've been called every name in the book as a library worker, absolutely every name in the book. And I think you just don't take it personally. You can't meet their level. And I think just trying to, especially when it's really, it's huge conflict, how do we get them lower and then to where they need to be? Get them what they need, move them away. I think if it's small conflict, again, hearing them out, what's the problem, getting to the bottom of it, can you explain to me what's going on? How can we assist you with that? Here's option A, option B, what would you like to do? I think if we can offer solutions, that's always very helpful. And luckily, libraries always have many solutions to whatever problem that you've got. We generally have a way to get you what you need, or we can point you to the right place to get it. And so I found that it's really nice to work in a library where we have that versus, you work in a grocery store, I can only give you so many bananas, right? I can offer you a papaya, but I don't know that that's going to do it. So I think the bigger public, right, which is somebody has a book challenge, that is conflict, right? And how do we deal with that? Hopefully we've got really nice policy to fall back on, and we've got pathways built into our policy that help us make that decision and feel confident about that decision and know that we've got backup from town hall, from our board, from every stakeholder group who would see us go through that process and say, yes, we back you up. And the most important thing is hopefully we've got the backing of our community when we make those decisions. I think a really great, not great because it's horrible that it happened, but I don't know if you guys saw a couple of weeks ago Reading Library who had that bomb threat, and the way that the board and the director and the town and the people came out in support and created this whole art project. It was just really nice to see. And so I think that that's a piece of dealing with conflict with, the public as a capital P public. How do I monitor staff morale? So the best way to monitor staff morale, again, is talking to people and being present. I think as a director, it's also important to understand that you're coming at it from a pedestal, no matter what. And so people may not always tell you exactly what they feel, unless you build that relationship, unless you build that trust with them where they feel like they can come to you and have a conversation about how they're feeling or what's going on. And that does take time. It takes time, but trust is the most important thing. I'm really big about you will never find me lying ever. You will never hear me say anything but a truth. And if I can't tell you the answer to something, that's what I'm going to say. I cannot talk about that with you, or that is something that we'll have to discuss at a different time, because there's going to be confidential things that we're not able to discuss fully, especially in terms of staff and HR. So talking to people, hearing people out, that's the best way to find out if your morale is low. I think kind of like anecdotally, another really good way to find out if morale is low is, one of the things I love to have is, some people will call it sunshine. This is a little bit different than a sunshine. I love a staff association. Now, I don't know if Westborough has a staff association, but I love a staff association where it is a group of people with your representatives voted on by the staff who can come in and help you plan fun things for staff. So if you're closing for staff development, help me plan the lunch. Is there any fun thing we can do? Can we make it a spirit day? Help me figure that out so that it's not the director telling you how to have fun, right? That it's working with your staff to figure out what can we do to make things fun. And I think a great way to measure morale is how many people participate in the fun. Because I've worked in plenty of libraries where they would try to do something and no one would participate, and that to me is, red flag number one of a low morale environment. I love, there's a bunch of Facebook groups. There's one person, I think her name is Catriona, but I don't remember her last name, but I will get it to you if you're interested, who studies low morale in libraries. And she did a talk for, I think it was Massachusetts library system a while ago, and it was very interesting to hear her studying low morale in libraries specifically. You don't see a lot of people studying that. How to look at it, how to deal with it, what are ways that you can identify low morale and then work towards fixing it. And so it's really interesting. So I'm in her Facebook group, I'm looking at the questions people ask. So there's a lot of ways to identify low morale. I think changing it, fixing it is harder, and it takes time. Culture change is a lot of work, and it does, it just takes time. You have to build trust with staff. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. Kate? Okay, question 4. How would you address challenges related to limited resources such as staffing, space constraints, or budgetary constraints while maintaining high-quality library services? Please describe your approach to advocating for the library, and beyond social media, please describe other avenues used to promote and market the library.
Okay. So I will say, if I had the equation to fix that, we would have beautiful, amazing libraries that are fully staffed and running and open every hour of the day, and everyone would be so happy. It's different in every town. It's so hard. I've worked in some towns where beautiful building, beautiful budget, wonderful friends with a big budget as well, and just completely understaffed. And it made it really, really hard. I mean, if you have a hard time spending your friends' money on programs, you know you're understaffed, right? And so keeping the doors open was difficult. Addressing the building, and a lot of towns will do this. They'll build these really giant, beautiful new libraries, and they're amazing. I'm so glad we have them. But then they don't address the staffing issue that it creates. If you create 2 new service points, well, now you have just created 120 more hours of service point that you've got to figure out where that's going to come from. And so I'll talk about Natick in this, not that they're understaffed, but just because one of the projects that I worked on was addressing their service points. They had, I think, 2 service points on the first floor, 2 service points on the second floor, and then they had the children's room on the basement level. And one of the projects that I worked on was, how do we bring reference? It was very traditional: children's room, circulation, reference, and they could have been their own libraries, right, on either of those floors. And so we were trying to figure out, how do we get reference services on the first floor? Because not everybody comes upstairs. If they don't see us, we don't exist. And these were such high quality librarians providing wonderful services that people did not even know were there because they couldn't see them or didn't see them every day. And so we were staffing 2 people on the second floor plus the teen area. And so we did a study, an hour by hour study of who was on those floors, how many questions were they getting, what kind of questions were they. And if you know libraries, we keep track of all of this. And so we just had to kind of pull through our tracking system, do a study on what we had, what we could do. And we found that if we moved one of the people from the second floor down to the first and created a reference, we didn't call it reference because what does reference mean? That we had a research area where if anybody had a question, and you could see it from the circ desk. So if somebody walked up to the circ desk and said, "Where is Kalamazoo?" They could say, "You know what? Let me walk you over to the info services desk. Let me walk you over to the research desk. Kate will be really happy to help you with that question. She's great at this." And they could just turn around and see us, and we could, come on over. It was a personal interaction versus a handoff. And that was really great. And from that new service point, not only did we only have to staff 1 person upstairs, and we only had to staff, the hot hours, we were also able to free up some people for some off-desk time, which allowed us to do more programming, which was great. But also we saw our reference questions go up, which was wonderful to see also. So I think you have to be creative. It's not, it's a very broad answer, but how do you deal with lack of staff? You have to be creative, and you have to work with what you have while you have it. Concurrently, right, you can also be advocating for more staff. So your data gathering, I think data-informed decisioning is so important when you're a library. Coming to an ask with data saying, "I need this, here is why, here's how this could fix this, here's what you could get if this was funded." I think that's really important, right? That carries more weight than just saying, "Well, we're understaffed and we need people." Well, what does that really mean? So I think the more that you can infuse data, if you can use actual stories, storytelling is so important in libraries. Every one of us needs to be a fantastic storyteller, and we usually are because we read a lot of books. But to be able to storytell and advocate for what you need. So staffing is one of them. Budget's another thing. We have state standards in place which help our budgets from being slashed, right? We have our municipal appropriation requirement. We have the, things that help us with that in the state. However, in terms of growth, you also have to do a good job saying, here's what you gave me for whatever. Programming last year was $12,000. If we up that to $16,000, here's what else you can get. And so I think it's very much presenting a menu, right? Here's what we could do, having a plan for it. It means more than just saying, give me more money and we'll do more programming. It's great, but how does that impact the community, right? What is the impact? Are they driven by patron want, need, your strategic plan, all of those pieces? So I think having a really good story to tell is important. Space constraints is very hard. I think, again, let's be creative. So you use every square inch of the building that you have. And I think it's also really hard. Librarians, library workers, all of us are very, very much patron first, right? So oftentimes you'll see a sacrifice of staff space for patron space. And that, there's a number to which we can do that. I spent, 5 years in Natick working in a hallway, and it was okay with me because we got a new innovation center out of it, right? So I think that we're creative. However, we also need to hold space for the work that we need to do as library workers. It's tough. It's tough to use the space you have. I think making sure that whatever space that you think of or design, if you have the opportunity to rethink or design, is making sure that you're putting casters on every single thing. If it can move, let it move. I did a legislative breakfast in Wilmington, and after the redesign of the first floor, they had never done any events in that space. And so it was the first time that we really got the ability to kind of flex that muscle of moving all of the stacks out of the way and putting chairs in place. And it was so easy, and it was so nice to be able to be in the space with the books rather than kind of in our very enclosed program room. And it allowed us to have a lot more people, more dialogue, talking about what we're doing, in a much more effective legislative breakfast. And it was really nice to be flexible about our space because, as we know, we only have so much square footage. There's only so much that we can do with what we've got. And so if we're able to flex and move things, I think it creates better futuring because we don't know what iteration of Westborough Public Library will be in 10 years or in 20 years. I think COVID taught us that. We're never quite sure what the next 5 years is going to bring. So I think being flexible about it is very important.
Thanks.
Oh, how do I promote and market the library beyond social media? Sorry, I'm being long-winded.
That's okay.
So social media is important, but we'll throw that away because beyond. So there's a lot of other avenues that we use to promote and market the library. So really any avenue that's available to you. So like Westborough TV is a great example. I think being out in the public is a great example. Just like print isn't dead, print books aren't dead, neither is print media. So there's going to be people who are always going to want a printed calendar of the stuff that's coming up next. One of the fun things, in Wilmington, I switched us over to a new calendar software, which also does our meeting room booking and our app. It's a whole thing. But one of my favorite things that it does is that it allows you to create a printable PDF flyer to your specification. So if you have somebody walk up to you, or this is a better example. If I'm going to the senior center for an outreach program, and I'm going there to do a book talk, I might say, bring me up the next 3 months of events that are tagged book and are for adults. Hit create, and it's going to create a beautiful PDF calendar of all of those events that are specified to that audience. And so when I saw that ability in that software is one of the pieces where I was like, ooh, I think we need to get this. Because that's just a game changer, right? Rather than having to generate them all ourselves. We still generate our own, but they're a little bit different. I think print media is important. Press releases still are super important. Working with your local newspaper is important. I think just, again, talking about what you're doing, being a salesperson is very important. I talked last time about a zine that I put together for summer reading that I worked with my staff on in Wilmington. I brought some examples if you want to see them, but you also don't have to. But it's a 20-page kind of glossy magazine, comprehensive summer exciting magazine, and it's got just a really compelling image, something that's different rather than just slapping like a picture of the front of the library on it, something to get people engaged. And so we've been handing those out left and right, and we were able to get them donated, which It's always the goal. So I think you just, again, have to think outside the box in terms of how do you market your library. I think the more opportunities you have on a stage, in front of a mic, with your neighbor, in a taxi cab, whomever, we're talking about what we do. I think one of my favorite stories is when I worked in Marlborough, we had one of our administrative assistant, of all people, who was lovely, but she was going on a flight on vacation and had booked, a driver to get her to Logan. And this man came in an hour later and said, "Oh, I just drove somebody to Logan. They told me to come here and get a library card." And it was just like, of course she did. But that's the kind of people who work in libraries, right? We love to talk about what we do. And if we can get, driver X who's going to Logan to come in and get a library card, that's a win, right? Because he didn't have it before. So I think just being creative and always be selling, right? That's what we're doing.
Perfect. Thank you. Kate? Next. Oh, no, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Before I begin, on behalf of visual learners everywhere, I want to thank you for including a chart.
Always.
That was great.
Many of us are visual learners, and while that may be a low order of learning, that is where we are. So it's appreciated.
Former teacher, I've got this.
So, what is your philosophy regarding the role of programming in the library? There are two sub-questions here. In a smaller spaced library such as ours, how do you balance the use of space amongst all categories of patrons while maintaining a high level of service for all? And then, what role do you see the teens in our community having in relationship to our library?
It's a great question. So programming is so important in libraries. I think if we're looking at the core of what we do, books, right, are always going to be number one in any way, shape, or form. And yes, audiobooks count. But I think programming is just so important in community building, skill learning, providing information, trusted information to people in a way that they can absorb it. And I think if we talk about, different levels of learning, there's going to be people who will not learn something if we hand them, a database to read and expect them to go, versus something where they're learning by seeing and touching and feeling and meeting people. So programs are just so important to libraries in 2024 and beyond. So I think that's A. B is, how do we make that work in a small space, right? There are going to be areas within our library that we can utilize in more than one way that isn't super disruptive, right? So for example, in Wilmington, in the redesign, they created this little conversation area, and it's within the stacks, so it's right next to the circ desk. But we have seen people go to that conversation area and meet and talk and have coffee. We've had our, friends jewelry sale committee just meet there and talk about what they have to do, because we don't really have another option for them in terms of study rooms or meeting rooms, or very limited access to those. And it's been really great to see this kind of, it's not separated, there's no wall, but kind of we've determined that this side is going to be the loud side and this side is going to be the quiet study. And I think that helps, right? Trying to be aware of what type of program you're doing. Sometimes it has to be within the space, and you have to weigh whether that's worth the disruption it's going to cause, time of day, how busy it's going to be. And you can also have conflicts within different departments within your library planning a program. Say you've got one space, and children's wants to do a program, adult wants to do a program. You also have to have really strong meeting room policy that always puts library and town use first before community use, only because I have seen too many times that, I want to book a program on this day for Pi Day. It's September and I can't book it because we've got the Girl Scouts there. It's not that we don't want the Girl Scouts there. We absolutely want communities to use our space if we have it. We have to remember our core function as a library first. And so it's really important to have strong meeting room policy that allows for that. So it's hard. It's hard. And I think that you just kind of have to be creative. I think if you can do programming outside of your library, so summer's great, right? If we can do programs outside, on the lawn, wherever, wonderful. If we can go to the senior center and do a program rather than, always having them here, if it's going to be an issue with space, let's do that. So I think it's a weighing of what's going to be the most disruptive versus what's worth it. There's also cases where it's great to do a program in the middle of the floor because of the exposure that gets to people just walking by. Maybe they're picking up a hold and they hear an author talk going on. I think that's pretty neat. I'd stop. I'd be like, what's going on? I'm a library person, so naturally I would. But sometimes that's great. But yeah, it's a really hard balance when you look at the space that you have and how do you divvy that up in a way that's priority. But I think making sure that you have good staff procedures, so that we know what the way to, how far in advance we're booking, how does it look, who has, dibs on whatever day, however you want to put it, and what kinds of programs we're doing. We generally will we're looking out more than a year, generally. We're planning programs months and ahead. And so we can kind of make decisions based on that. We always know when Library Card Sign-Up Month is going to be. We always know when National Library Workers Week is going to be. We know in the winter people are going to want programs on baking and, creating and gifting and things like, I think we're always looking at themes and what makes sense to have in the library. So it's hard. And what role do I see teens in our community having? Ooh, I love this question. So like I said, I'm a former teacher. I taught 9th and 12th grade. And I loved the kids. The kids is not why I stopped teaching, trust me. I think that it's so important to have if you can build an active teen audience, keeping them so that when they're adults, they're library adults. And then when they have kids, they have library kids, and those kids become library teens. Teen is where we see them get lost, and then they never come back. And so if we can grow them as library lovers, it's such a gratifying thing to do, and have programs that they design and have space that they can use, which is always tough. In Natick, we had a very beautiful teen room, and I think it's really hard because patrons will walk by and see it empty during the day, right? How do you deal with that piece, saying, well, that's for them, and here's why. So I think having those conversations is important, but teens are so important to your community, and they need a lot of support. I think I would not want to be a teen in 2024. There's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. It's not like it was when I was that age. And, I have a 5-year-old son, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when he's a teen? I don't know. I'm going to need advice for that. But it's a lot. He's only 5. So I think having a safe space for them to go, especially after school, is so important. Places where they can build community, and that community can extend to as they grow up and get older. It's a wonderful thing to see, and I know that Westborough's done a wonderful job cultivating that. It's very envious, trust me. It's the envy of a lot of the library world.
I have a quick follow-up.
Yep.
You raised a point. You have a little quiet area, you have a quiet area, you have a talking area. Libraries are changing. They're not the place where the little old ladies run around going shh all the time. How do you communicate / smooth over that conflict of the old library ladies like me and the young library ladies? And I'm sorry, I'm not a shush person, but you know what I mean. How do you smooth that over so that people can transition with the library?
Yes, I think that it happens a lot. I have done this a lot. I think it goes back to that clear as kind piece. So I think when I see it happening, I am not shy about just having a conversation. Hey, just so you know, libraries are changing. People are welcome to talk and have conversations. If you need somewhere quiet, here are your options, if we have options, right? Sometimes we don't. Or communicate, what is it that you're looking for? How can I help you get that? Instead of just, hey, get over it. It's a loud place now, right? I think it depends on the person, but I think having that open conversation and communicating that libraries are no longer that, however they are X, Y, and Z, right? It's not that we're not this, it's just that we're all these wonderful things, right? so I think having those conversations, there's always going to be people who, no matter what, right, they want things how they want them. This is how they remember it. This is how it should be. But I think with time, you kind of get there.
Thank you.
In terms of programming, are there any segments of the population that you feel are at risk of being overlooked, and how do you address that?
Ooh. Yes, there are many segments of the population that are overlooked. I think in broad terms, our non-users, right? They're very hard to assess what a non-user wants. We know what our users want. They tell us, right? They come in every day, hey, you moved that, I don't like that, right? Or, hey, you did this program, I loved that program, thank you for having this presenter. And so I think engaging with our users is important to figure out if what we're doing is good. However, trying to figure out what a non-user wants is a lot of work, and it's very hard. And I think especially populations, I'm thinking about in Worcester, we would have immigrant populations where the concept of a library did not exist where they came from. And so we had to step back and say, okay, we're handing them this pamphlet. They don't know what any of it means. Yes, it's in their language, but we haven't contextualized it. And so I think making sure that we're stepping back and saying, okay, what does this population need? And not trying to do a one-size-fits-all, saying, okay, we may need to approach it X, this way or that way. That might be a better approach. I think immigrant populations are always ones that we don't want to lose focus on in terms of how do we serve them. And the answer is different for every group. I just bought a whole collection of Haitian Creole books because that was a population who needed material. And so it's really going to depend on your demographic. But I think very broad terms, again, our non-users, people who aren't coming in, why? Right? Because we know all the wonderful things we have for them. We know we offer everything that they could ever want or need or dream of, right? We're the public library. But why are they not coming in? And that's a really hard thing to figure out. Like, I'm working on that now in my strategic plan. And one of the things that I'm doing is waking up at the crack of dawn, which is normally 5 a.m. for me. So like crack of dawn is going to be 3 a.m. To go to the commuter rail station in Wilmington while the commuters are out there, so I can just have conversations with them and give them free stuff. But talk to them about, what do you need? What would make you come in, right? What about if we did this? What if we did that? What's going on in your life that we could help you with? What are some things that you would like to see? And I ask myself that a lot, right? What would make me leave my house 6:30 p.m. and go to the library for an event? What would have to be going on to make me do that? As a single mom, as a person who works full time, also as a person who spends all their time in a library, what would make me go? And so I think we have to figure out what is compelling enough to bring them here. And even if it's just entertainment, right? We can always serve up literacy on the side. But what are things that we can do to assist people? And are we approaching it in the right way? And it's not always going to be a program that they come to at night, right? That's not always going to be the answer. But how do we get them to access our services? That could be a database. I just purchased Mango Languages in Wilmington, right? Mango Languages has everything you could ever want. You can learn to speak pirate if you want on Mango Languages. But they have a really compelling ASL section. But how do we get people to know that they can access these things from their library when it's so much easier to just go, oops, subscribe, right, on your phone? So I think, I know I got into this a little bit in the written portion, but I've seen a trend where people are looking for convenience features, right? They want us to make it easy for them. How do we remove barriers to getting people in here? So we've got to talk to people and figure out what they need. There's a lot of populations, I think. I think teens is a population that's at risk for sure, but we already talked about them. I think anybody who's not coming in here is a population that we want to make sure that we're hitting or getting in a different way while still doing those core things that everyone who's already coming is coming for. It's a big job, and we kind of have to prioritize what we're doing because we can't do everything.
Great. We just have a few more minutes, but we just have one more question.
Sure.
So if you want to give us your summary on this last one, it'd be great.
Okay. How do you handle challenges related to censorship or controversial materials, balancing intellectual freedom with community values?
That's a big question. It's tough. So I think it goes back to, again, having very strong policy, and having policy that leadership, staff all have buy-in and feel good about, that yes, this is our pathway forward, this is our policy, this is our mission, vision, values, this is why we do what we do, and policy that your board of trustees feels strongly in as well, that they agree with those pathways. And I think if you have those pieces together, then nothing makes a challenge easy, ever, but at least it gives it structure. It's really hard. No one wants to deal with it. It's inevitable. I think almost every library has dealt with it. Surprisingly, Worcester, we really didn't get any, and I think it's because we were a big institution. And generally, they are targeting smaller libraries who they do not feel have the infrastructure to handle it. I think we've seen this a lot with, First Amendment audits, doing a lot of training so that staff feel confident and comfortable in their pathway forward, or standing a ground, knowing that this is policy, this is what we do. I know that I'm right in what I'm doing. I'm not escalating a situation. I'm handing you a form, you are handing it back to me, and that is the end of it, because then it gets moved on. So I think prioritizing making sure that your frontline staff are not stuck in the crossfire of whatever's going on is so, so important, and that you're checking in when they happen, because it does happen. In Wilmington, prior to my starting, they had a program challenge. And from that, there was a lot of harassment that happened in the library, to the staff, to administration, to everybody. And they were very lucky because they had very strong support from town hall. The town manager at the time, no longer the town manager, wrote a letter of support, showed a lot of support. However, the day-to-day grind of having people walk in and want to give you a piece of their mind is really hard. So you've just got to make sure you're supporting your staff in that. And I think, again, from there, for example, in Wilmington, our Board of Trustees just passed a new program challenge form for their policy. So that will hopefully help next time give a pathway to how we can handle these, instead of it just being kind of all over the place. But I think the most important thing in how to handle that is make sure that you are checking in with all of your stakeholders, that we are agreed on whatever decision is made, that we're acting in the best interest of the institution. It's really hard if you're in a community who feels one way about censorship, because we know as libraries, it's not black or white, right? We are against censorship, right? We are pro freedom of information, right? Like, these are our pillars of why we do what we do. We are, defenders of your right to read and research and learn. And those are things that are never going to be, they're not politically charged, right? It is what it is. That's why we do what we do. And so as long as you're strong in those, your policy backs that up, and you're making sure to support your staff, hopefully that allows you to make a decision that maybe part of your community is not happy with. But I would hope, even in a community where 100% of the people wanted to ban every single book that you had, that a library would still stand for not allowing that to happen. But it is something you need to measure and weigh in on, and check in with your key stakeholders, your board of trustees, your town management, on why we feel the way we feel, and making sure that you're doing your job in terms of educating, right? That my job is to educate all of you on the things that we're seeing and doing as library director.
Terrific. Thank you so much for all your thoughts today.
Thanks.
And for the time and effort you put into your written
Thanks.
layout. That was really great. Do you have any questions for us before we close up today?
Oh, yes. So last time I kind of asked about what success looks like for somebody in this position, inheriting this position after somebody who's been here for so long and has done just amazing things. And I think I'm more interested this time, if you don't mind, about hearing why each of you, a board of trustee is a volunteer position. I'm interested in why you love the library. Why do you do what you do?
just go orange
Well, here we go. When I started campaigning, I didn't know what a trustee was. I've been learning. I've been doing it for 1 year.
Proud.
And when I talked about it in the beginning, I said, well, here's how much I love the library. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was watching Italy very carefully. They were 2 weeks ahead of us. When they went into lockdown, I went to the library and I checked out 30 books. Because 2 weeks ahead of us, we were going to have a lockdown.
Yep. Priorities.
No way that was going to happen without books. And so I've gotten very interested in helping our community learn what the library is doing. And I'm going out in the community, doing some talks, really enjoying it. I love it.
Great. Love that.
I joined the Board of Trustees about 3 months ago, and the reason I ran for the office was that I'm a New Englander of long standing, even though I don't have the accent, but there was at that time nobody running for an empty seat. And that, to me, was just not what this town should be about, and certainly not with what the New England towns I've been living in were about. In addition to that, there were some interesting things going on in the town, not the least of which had to do with people trying to sculpt the sort of ideas that the library was able to present. This was an opportunity for me to make a contribution to a town that I've lived in for 20 plus years, and I haven't regretted it, except for a moment or two since I've joined the board. I think that one of the reasons that I felt it was appropriate to run was because of the encouragement I received from the library staff, and they and the people at Town Hall were just the kind of people that I think small town officials should be. And so this has been a terrific opportunity for me, and I would hope that the new librarian will be able to continue along those lines.
Great.
Hi, I joined some years ago. I can't remember what year we joined. 12 or so years, we'll
Yeah,
guess.
flies by, huh?
But Ed and I both ran. There was a communication issue, and suddenly there was no one on the ballot, so they were asking for people to be write-in candidates, and I love libraries. I was a library kid, teen, adult, and so I said, sure, I'll do it. I love the library, and I've stayed because it's an amazing group of people, both the staff and the trustees, who are dedicated and committed, and maybe a little crazy, but in a good way, to keeping that library functioning and doing what it was born to do, which is serve this community as best it can.
I've been a reader since third grade or so, and I've in the library every week since I moved here 24 years ago. And at some point in there, 12 odd years ago, one of the librarians said, "Hey, would you like to be a trustee?" And I thought about it and said, well, I decided really it would be a good way to give back to the community, because Westborough is a great place and I've gotten a lot from it. My kids have gotten even more. And so as with Mike, I enjoy most of it. There's been a few stressful moments, which other trustees will know about. But so I like it. I like to help the library and support the library, and I'm giving back to the community.
For me, it comes down to love of community, wanting to be involved and give back to Westborough, and the library is a logical place for it. For me, I love the library. I love books. I love learning, and I believe in the library as a heart of our community, and want to support it as a place for everyone.
I have a strong belief that a town is what you make of it. And the community is the volunteers that are in it. And no matter how long or short you're in a place, that if you're in the ability to give back, that you should. As a teacher, I really think communities rely upon their libraries. And as a parent, it really helped me connect with my community when we first moved here and give a lot back to my family. And so when I was looking for a place to volunteer, I thought the library is a pretty great place to do it. So.
My life has been education and English. I was a high school English teacher. I was a college professor in education and English department. Getting my first library card at 5, you had to be able to print your first name.
Oh.
But my first name was Mary Margaret. A lot of letters. I practiced, and I was so excited to get it and be able to take out a book under my name. And as I went through my career, through college, I worked study in doing library work. All the way through to my doctoral program, I learned the skills to be able to do the research for that from all those wonderful librarians who taught me the skills of how to find what you really need. And when we moved to this new town, we didn't know anyone. We've been here 8 years. So I volunteered to teach a class at the library, and I met 20 wonderful people who were in the memoir class. And then it's now your turn to do something for them. So I ran for office 3 months ago. We were together, and everything exploded into all of these wonderful opportunities to learn everything about the library. We were kind of hoping we could just ease in a little bit, but no, we went into the deep end right off. So it's been a wonderful experience. I love the library.
I'm an English teacher also, in literature, and you kind of fall into this thing when you hang around the library a little bit, and you kind of promote it to your students, and one of the ladies on the circulation desk said, "Gee, you're around here a lot. Why don't you run for the library board?" And so I did, and I've been there for 15 years.
Right.
And I got on the building committee when we were going to start our big expansion, and we wished that it had gone better with the town, but there wasn't enough money to go around, and they're still working real hard on the renovation or in its current form, and I'm still at the library.
Great.
Anything else for us?
Do I have time for another question?
Real quick.
Okay. It's okay.
Maybe not one for everybody.
No, I was just curious how you see your role as a board in terms of support of the library director.
So our role is to support the director who runs the library. So we're very much in support of constant communication, helping any way that we can without overstepping. Like, our job is not to micromanage the library, but to support our director to best serve the library the best way we can.
That's great. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your service.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time
Thank you
today. We
for coming.
appreciate it.
If you want my zine, I'll leave them here
Yeah,
for
that'd
you.
be great. Thank
And
you.
then you can take this lovely
Appreciate it. I love swag.
Feel free to take the water for the trip home.
Thank you.
Long
Thanks.
night at Wilmington.
Thank you.
thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in that. So I think the next part of our task here is to deliberate on the two candidates that we saw in front of us. So we're happy to open up discussion on your thoughts.
Are we going to discuss them one by one? Or how, is there do you have a structure of how you'd like to discuss, of how you'd like to do this?
I would say, yeah, if you want to give your thoughts on who's stuck out to you most and the best fit for the Westborough Public Library. I guess
Okay.
probably would be the best way to go.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Anybody that wants to volunteer, you want to start? Go ahead.
Uh, as soon as Kate walked in, she lit up the room. She brought a tote bag, didn't see that first, but she brought an awful lot of enthusiasm with her that she plainly wanted to share with us. I didn't ask a question. I was going to hitchhike on Kate or Mike or Ed when it asked about the teen room, because I kind of have a little interest in that. And you didn't have to ask her, because she told you.
Well, I added up the scores that I did. Kate got 28, and the other gentleman got 11. If you cannot give me the mission statement of your organization that you've been with in a concise way that's meaningful to others, then he isn't somebody I want to be representing us. And when she spoke about her mission, she knew it concisely in terms that you could understand. She gave documentation and examples of what her decisions were based upon. The other gentleman made vague references. In terms of personal charisma, which is important in this job, one had a very low affect, the other had a much brighter affect, and their knowledge base seemed to be skewed from very personal, why I want the job, to why I want to serve. And that's why I chose Kate as the one with the most scores.
I was impressed with both of our candidates. I think they both came with a lot of experience that could be useful in the role here as library director. I felt that Kate brought a passion to her discussions and her examples that resonated with me in terms of thinking about the initiatives and the spirit that we have at the Westborough Public Library. I could see her as someone who is able to connect with our staff, which is super important to me. I really liked her approach to professional development and empowering our staff to be able to handle the current trends that are happening in libraries today. So I thought that she'd make a really great fit.
I thought both candidates offered a lot of strengths. I thought Kate especially brought forth a lot of passion and creativity with the ideas that she shared. She spoke about a lot of ideas that demonstrated the ability to collaborate with others and showed her ability to treat others with respect in a variety of ways.
Yeah, it seemed pretty clear to me that both candidates had experience and the skills to run a library, but Kate has the attitude and the passion to inspire a library. So,
Yeah, I second what everyone said. I think again, they both are qualified library directors, but Kate brings a passion and, I mean, she said, you know, when I'm going to make a change or when we have to have the data. And I thought that was very important because when we were dealing with funding, when we were dealing with issues, having the data is what makes the difference. And I also appreciated what she said about the right to read and the library's duty to give people that security.
I think there were positives to both of them. But I was impressed with Kate before she was introduced to me because I read the letter that she had sent in, and she was far superior of the two in terms of her writing skills. I wasn't kidding when I held up that chart. That's a non-trivial issue for me. I think her experience is reflective of the kind of experience we want. But when I think back this evening to what impressed me most, it was the energy that she brought to the discussion. So I'm pretty much convinced she's got my vote.
Janine?
And I agree, they're both qualified, and I read everything that they gave us very carefully, and they both are really interested in libraries and care very deeply about them. But as Mike said, I was very impressed by her letter, especially, not just the resume, but the letter. And today, the energy that she brought, I agree, but also every single point. I mean, I've filled my paper with her words because I just loved what she said. I liked what she said about community, not just like one thing here and one thing here, but really steps, really thought out, well thought out steps about how to engage the community, and very, I can't even pull them together, very carefully thought out, and then looking at the teens and how important they are to us, and staff. And in her letter, I loved the way she talked about working with her staff and mentoring her staff and finding a social worker to support her staff. And again, she has very carefully laid out strategies for every single thing. It's not just words. She really has a philosophy for every single thing she told us today. So I think it was a really very, very impressive interview and writing.
I think the written assignments were super important to help us understand. As you know, that's a large part of how they communicate with us, is providing reports for us and outlining steps for the future. So I think that was a great exercise for us to be able to get a sample and compare. Dot, did you have something?
Yeah. She didn't mention this too much in her speaking, but looking through her paperwork, Ed and Mary, on the renovation, I shouldn't be calling it renovation. Repair. But she would have experienced the renovation and rebuild of the Marlborough Library. And, you know, she might have something to add to our situation.
I'll second that. Not that that's a motion, but she mentioned that they'd renovated one floor of the
Yeah.
her library, and
Seems
we're
to be a
about to do the
three-floor
other, so that's
building.
extremely relevant.
Yeah, I think how.
And she also talked about the building project in the written thing, which,
And she
was
she was the
very
only
much
one.
on top of my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was the only one to talk about the repair project and saying how important that was going to be, and that for years that was going to be important, and that was one of the first things she was going to learn about.
And suggested to me she really did her homework as far as understanding our situation here.
I think Wilmington's situation was very similar in terms of what they hoped for a renovation did not go through, so therefore they needed to look at their space and say, okay, what can we do with it now? And so that's some expertise she can bring to that as well. So, all right, I think that's great. And here, if we're all hearing the same positives, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to appoint Kate-Lynn Coraccio to the position of library director, subject to the following: 1, satisfactory background and reference checks, and 2, the candidate's acceptance of the employment offer to be negotiated by the assistant town manager.
I'll take.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So that's a unanimous decision for all that's here with one absent. So thank you, everybody. We're excited. So as you know, we'll take them. The next steps is, we'll do that at the end. We'll do background check, and then Kim will negotiate with that, and we will keep you posted on the next steps as they unfold. So.
And I'm sorry, and the order of operation here is that, will we tell her this evening?
So Kim will take care of it from this point out.
All right,
So she will notify.
So Kim, can you just fill us in a little bit on the nuts and bolts of what happens next?
Sure, I'll reach out to her. Sorry, I'm just capturing the vote. Give me 1 second.
No problem. Kim is also taking notes for us so that Deb could focus on the interview, so.
Okay.
So I will reach out to her today. This is Livecast Garage, but it's being Livecast Garage.
broadcasted
Thank
live.
you. Thank you. I was going to live stream and all of those words. So she may well know, but I will certainly reach out to her. I think Mary and I can talk about doing the references together if that's that's often how we've done it. And then from there, we'll extend the offer. And, you know, typically it's not uncommon for individuals to give 30 days notice for this level position. Obviously, there's an interest in getting someone on board as quickly as possible, but I think realistically, you know, when we have department heads leave, we appreciate getting a 30-day notice. So I kind of wear my, you know, on that side of it, I think we could anticipate that the start date likely would not be until probably closer to the end of July.
Great.
But certainly, if she's available sooner, we would take her sooner.
Great. Well, thank you for your good efforts on our behalf.
No problem. Happy to do it.
Are we going to need to appoint an interim person given that timing? I would
Um,
not know until I guess you've.
We're not going to know until the next steps, and then we'll evaluate at that point. So, and thankfully, we have an assistant director that's already set up to cover things for now, and then we'll look at how long that's going to be and then evaluate from that point. So, any other questions about this point in the process? All right, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
I'll second.
All in favor? All right, meeting is dismissed. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us today. We appreciate it.